In today's video, we are going to build a prop or a model for our Christmas light display. And what I want to do, I built a couple snowflakes for my first year of doing this, and it's time to update them. So I'm going to redo how I did the snowflakes so they look better, just to make improvements. They still work fine, but I just want to make some improvements. So let's talk about how I built the first iteration of these snowflakes. They're back here. This is the first snowflake that I built. Actually, that other one's the first snowflake I built. So this right here is the first snowflake that I built. I started with this corrugated plastic. It comes in panels of 4 feet by 8 feet. And when I started building this, the first thing I tried to do was drill holes into it. The drill bit really chewed up the plastic and it did not make a nice hole. So what I ended up doing was I still drilled holes in it, but instead of poking the pixels through, I zip tied the pixels in pairs. And the reason I did it in pairs is just because it was easier to figure out the wiring. These pixels don't have a ton of wire in between each pixel. So in order for me not to have to do a lot of splicing, cutting the wires and adding more wire to it, I ended up doing them in pairs. Now it works and it looks pretty cool, and I'll show you a clip of what it looks like when it's lit up and some sequencing done. Jingle bell, but I think since the pixels are pointing outwards and not towards your audience, that it could use some improvement. And here's my idea for improving on this. I made a smaller snowflake, and this is actually going to go on my mega tree. I'm going to build a mega tree with triangles, and I'm going to fill it in with different sized circles, and in the middle of the circles is going to be different shapes. I'll probably do snowflakes, maybe some stars. I haven't decided yet. But I use Pex Tubing for the outside, and I ran some pixel strip through the tubing, and then I used Coroplast, which is a different type of corrugated plastic. And this one I found using these punch bits, and I'll include a link below. I'll also put a better picture of what they look like. But these punch bits, when you put them in your drill, cut pretty nice holes through this Coroplast. I have not tried them on this other corrugated plastic, but I'm sticking with the Coroplast for now because I like the white, and since I'm able to poke them through, I don't need the see-through plastic. What we're going to do to replace these is we're going to start with a sheet of Coroplast, which I have back here, and I want to make the new snowflakes as big as I can using one sheet. So what we're going to have to do is draw some big circles. Now the next step is to just cut out the circles. So what you're going to need for this, I'm going to use one of these mounting strips to cut out the circles as a compass. Then we're going to use this, the same strip to mark out where we want to punch the holes for the pixels. Since these are already evenly spaced, we can just use this as a stencil and draw in our holes, and then we just have to punch them out with our hole punch. So let's get started. What we need to do first is find the center of our circle. Count the dots. 45, 46, 47, 48. So we want the middle of that, which is going to be 24. 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. We'll make a line. So we're going to measure 24 inches from the end. Okay, that should be our center. So at this point, put the thumbtack through the end, and I want to take it all the way out to the edge. We have the circle drawn. Now we can cut out the circle, or we can draw the design now. So let's go ahead and do that. My snowflakes have 8 arms to them. This corrugated plastic has good lines in it, so I can follow one of the lines to make my top, and I can follow one of the lines to make my bottom. Now I just have to draw the circles. Just draw my circles. Now we flip this around going the other way. Start drawing your circles this way. Since we did not cut our circle out, we can actually measure 24 inches from the corner. Let's draw our circles. You can put any design you want into this. I'm just doing a snowflake. Whatever you feel like. That's the nice thing about building your own props. Let's draw our circles. 1, 22, 23, 24, 25, 11, 12, 13. So if I draw a dot in the middle of that dot, then you can draw your circles. So we'll have a star in the middle, we'll have the big spinner, and then the ends will have 3 tips each. Okay, if you line those up, so you put the last dot in this one, and then the dot you're measuring from there. This will be your first dot, or the end dot of this arm. Then you just draw it in. And this will make sure that your snowflake looks the same all the way around. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6, 7, 8, 9. I think this looks pretty good. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The next step is to cut out the circle. Now that the circle is cut out, it's time to punch the holes out. And you'll want a piece of wood or something to put underneath it. So now we can start punching our holes. I want them to have a snug fit, so I'm punching them a little bit smaller. I found that a good way to punch these holes is to line up your punch and then press down before you pull the trigger. If you don't press down first, the punch will tend to slide around. The battery's dead. Okay, we're almost done. The holes have been punched. The next step for this piece is going to be to wire it. 7 strings of pixels, because they come in strings of 50. Okay, we have 7 strings of pixels here. We're starting in the center, and you can look on the circuit board of each pixel and the side that the wires are labeled. So on the little circuit board in there, it'll say 12 volt DI, which is the data, and then the ground. If the wires are coming out on that side, that's the input side. So we'll start with the male side, but we're going to do every other one because we're going to go all the way out and then all the way back. Once we get to the star, we're going to go to the left and we're going to skip every other one, because once we get to the next branch, we're going to turn around and head back. Okay, once we get to the end, you'll put the last pixel in the end before you get to the next branch, and then we'll head back the other way. And if you follow this pattern all the way around, you should end up filling all the holes without having to splice any wires. All right, 2 of the arms are done. Here, I'll flip it around so you can see what I'm doing on the other side. I really like sequencing these snowflakes because you can divide them up into so many different sections. All right, that is 100 lights on there. Now again, I'm going to cut off these connectors because they are not waterproof. And I'll splice them, I'll solder the wires together and put some shrink wrap on them to waterproof it. The pixels themselves are waterproof, but the connectors that they come with are not. So you just have to be careful. When you're buying pixels, you need to make sure you get the waterproof ones, because they do make some that are not for outdoor use. The nice thing about not having to zip tie these on, in addition to it being easier to assemble, is if you get a bad pixel, it's going to be easier to swap them out. You just pop out the bad pixel and solder in a new one. My feet are falling asleep sitting on my knees like this. Ugh. A couple little tips. 1, get a chair. And 2, your fingers will start to hurt, especially your thumb if you're pushing them in with your thumb. So maybe try a glove. Use a glove. Come on, focus, focus. Hello. Okay, we have all of the pixels added to our snowflake. Okay, the next step is to add the circle around that I'm gonna light with pixel strip. So what you're gonna need is you're gonna need some 1-inch Pex tubing, but I'm gonna strap the first section down, and then I'm gonna work my way around the circle. Okay, we're about at the end. Before I zip tie that part down, I'm gonna go ahead and cut my pipe. I am gonna leave a little bit of a gap, as it'll let me have access. It's gonna let me have some access to the strip once it's in there. Okay, so I have my fish tape here. I'm just gonna fish it through, attach it to our pixel strip and start pulling the pixel strip through. Electrical tape. And we want to tape it really well onto here. Pulling and winding this up. Okay, I think we got it. I may come back with a short section of Pex tubing. So if I cut a piece of tubing, just cut a chunk out of the back and zip tie it here, then I can access the wires from the back and you'll still be able to see the lights going all the way around. In this next part, we are going to be adding our pigtails, and that will allow us to connect it to our controller. So here's our controller. The controller gets connected to a power supply, and then the pixels get connected to the controllers. This controller is the Falcon F16 version 3. It has 16 ports, and we are going to use 5 of those for this Snowflake. Since this Snowflake has 336 pixels, we're going to do 4 strings of 84 pixels just to keep the number under 100 per string. You can put up to 170 per port. When you get that many, you will probably have to do some power injecting. So to avoid the power injecting, we are going to do 4 strings of 84 pixels. And this will just help the reliability of this prop. And then we'll have a 5th string for the circle around it. Now I started wiring at this one. So I'm gonna put the first pigtail here. I use the end that has the nut always coming from the board. You can do it however you want. And then the color code I use is I go black, yellow, red. And the black is coming out of the ground. The yellow is coming out of the data. And the red's coming out of the voltage. And it's labeled, you can see it on this one. You have ground, then clock, data, voltage. We're not using the clock. And then you need to match that up with the wires coming out of your pixels. Now the pixels I got have the colored wires. You can get pixels that just have black. A lot of people use those. I kind of like the colored ones. The red is the voltage, the white is your data, and the blue is ground. Cut this connector off. Strip these wires. Give them all a good twist. And then we'll get one of our pigtails. I peel back some of the black, and I need a little more wire showing too. Okay, put your heat shrink on first, then get your hot soldering iron and some solder. Okay, put a little solder on the soldering iron. You touch it to the bottom of the wire, then you take your solder, and the heat is just gonna draw it into the wire, and you'll get a nice connection there. Okay, we'll do this other solder joint. Okay, you can give them a little tug just to make sure they're solid. And then what you're gonna do is slide your heat shrink right on over, and then get your heat gun. There you go. One pigtail is done. Now from here you're gonna count 84 pixels, and then wherever that ends, you're gonna snip the wires and put in a new pigtail, and just keep going around the snowflake. Okay, so I've added pigtails, what we're gonna connect to our controller. And then I also have a pigtail added to the pixel strip. So in the next episode, if I do anything to clean this prop up, I'll show you what I've done to clean it up. But the main goal of the next episode is going to be to connect it to a controller and then bring it into the software. So we're going to connect it to a controller. We're going to build a virtual model of the actual prop, of the actual model. And then we're going to show you how to insert it into the software. And the software we're going to be using is X-Lights. So that's it. This thing it's big. But I hope you enjoyed this. Stay tuned for the next episode. We'll show you how to light this thing up and play with it.